Hello, welcome to the Second Nature Show. My name is Dom Campbell. I am here with my show co-host, Alex Coble-Frakes, and Donna Masterson.
Hello.
And I am really excited for this show. This is going to be a unique show because we've got actually 3 guests today, 3 friends of mine. And I would like to introduce again to the show Scott Leeper with Andrea Carr and Michael Arnold. They have written a book together titled Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim. And so I'm jazzed to have these guys on the show so that they can share about this book and about their experience putting it together. And so Scott, Michael, Andrea, thank you for joining us today. This is awesome. So I'd like to start off with just kind of sharing how you guys came together for this book. What brought all this together? Share that story.
Okay, so it was this kind of started as my brainchild, but it was really more of a just a thought. It was just a small thought, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and show the book so everybody has reference of what it looks like. So this is our book here. This is our beautiful pictures on the back. So I'm from Indiana. I'm from Northern Indiana, and I'm a member of a shared workspace in town. For entrepreneurs, small business owners, that kind of thing. And I was sitting in there, this was July 26th, and just kind of sitting there, and for a while I've been toying with an idea of writing a book, but something told me I just didn't want to do it by myself. And so, I reached out to both Michael and Andrea and asked them if they wanted to write the book, and it was a resounding hell yes, let's do this. Michael was in the middle of a retreat. Andrea was at home. But, just even in the midst of Michael being at the retreat, we were texting back and forth, like already jazzed about the idea, already extremely excited about the idea, just geeking out on it. And so, a couple weeks later, Michael introduced us to Sarah Cannell. And actually, I want to say it was just a matter of a day or two, but she introduced us to Sarah Cannell, who also went through HCI as a writing coach in Chicago. And we hired her as our coach. And just from then on, she was a key piece in this. And the 3 of us had only known each other for a matter of a couple months. Yet we've got this book that we're writing, and it was a beautiful experience the whole time. So yeah, that's essentially how the book just came up.
That's awesome. I'm kind of curious because with the addiction, right? All 3 of you have a background in that. When you discovered this, I remember that the event where you discovered this, because you all shared this commonality, and it's where your light bulbs all went off about this. When you got together and you were talking about this, what was the one thing that surprised you most when you came together for this book?
For me, I don't think there was really any surprise, because knowing the passion that coaches bring to the table, period. It was almost like it just made sense that it was a hell yes. But I guess the one thing that kind of surprised me is the fact that the 3 of us only knew each other we met in April. Me and Michael met in person. And the crazy thing is, the 3 of us have never been in person talking collectively in the same room yet. And so, Michael, she was on stage, she shared her story. And I went up to her and gave her a hug. She didn't know me from Adam. I gave her a hug, told her I was proud of her for moving the mountains as she did. And then I talked a little bit about my dad's death from his alcohol addiction. And then Andrea reached out to me, and she was enthralled by my story and wanted me to be on her podcast. And so just after those things happened, it made sense to ask both of them to write a book with me. And here we are.
What surprised me and what kind of didn't surprise me is the simple fact that, like, it just goes to show, like, when somebody shares such a common, like, bond such as addiction or something that's so close to home, it's like we were already family. before we even really knew each other. There is already that underlying trust that it's like, I see you, I know you, I get you, I've been you. Like, we just were like, let's light this up. And it was really awesome. It was like, it was very warming. It was just one of those things that where it was just like, yeah, we're doing this. Cause it was like, we were just waiting for the three of us to be able to come together. And it was just like the stars aligned. It was divine timing. And it was just like, make it rain.
Yeah. I love it.
It's combustible energy. I mean, all three of you, it was like, it was the drive, it was the passion. And now, how long did it take you guys from when you guys started thinking about collaborating with writing the book to actually finishing it? How long did that take?
July 26th was the day that I sent the text to them and said, do you want to write a book? Wednesday, March 27th was our launch date. It took us about 3 months to write it. So August, September, October to write it. I think we went in a little bit November to write it too. But then November to end of February to mid-March was the production editing phase. I think we probably said we just finished our final edit 16 different times.
Final edit.
I think we went back into on our Facebook and Instagram walls. We were celebrating the fact the final edits are done 16 times.
Celebration.
Right. So we celebrated 16 times. But July 26th to March 27th, June, July, was that 8 months? 8 months total?
Wow, it's wonderful. Wow. Beautiful.
So we kind of have like this behind the scenes peek. We all follow you and we love the work that you're putting out into the world. And I would just love for you to take a moment to, if you want, like share your tie into addiction and what really motivated you and what made you decide this was an important thing. I would love for all of you to talk about that. And I know it's, shared in the book, but for people who may not know exactly what you guys have going on, I would love for them to get a little bit of that peek.
Let's do it in the order of the chapter. So Mikey and Andrea, go ahead. You guys, Mikey 1, Andrea 2, and I'll go last.
So why I chose to do this book and why I choose to recover out loud is because, it's one of those things that it's so people live in so much shame and guilt for actually being in sobriety and handling, conquering a disease and actually being able to live. And for me, it's devastating to see that, you're already devastated in your active addiction. I was a total piece of shit in my active addiction. And it's I chose to be that person that, because I was that way before, I'm not going to be that way in recovery. I'm not going to hide. I hid for so long in my active addiction. I'm not going to hide in recovery because, this is a gift. And I realized that when I went away to rehab, and then also in sobriety, I was this is not something that I cannot not talk about, and I tell people, and, I don't share this much in the book, but it's I guess I'm a big person. I'm a big 12-stepper. I go to the rooms, but I was I didn't get sober to go drink shitty coffee and hang out in church basements, even though I do that, but that's not the only reason why I got sober. I got sober to actually talk about it and to let people know, it's okay. You know what? Nobody is perfect. People are recovering from something every single day, whether it's alcohol addiction or a shopping addiction or whatever it is. Nobody's perfect, and I want people so badly to just, understand that and be okay with not being perfect and with owning your imperfections, because guess what? Somebody needs to hear that. And that's why I choose to recover out loud, because somebody needs to hear what I have to say, because I needed to hear that when I was in my active addiction.
Me next?
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. My alcohol addiction started when I was 21. I didn't drink very much before I turned 21 because I was one of those people where I was really kind of socially awkward, and alcohol enabled me to be social, to be fun, to be, and I became, I don't know. I learned how to socialize drunk. Like, so yeah, it started when I was about 21. By 23, I was heavily drinking daily. And in, let me think, summer of 2012, I stopped getting hangovers and I started experiencing withdrawal like every morning. And I didn't know what it was. I thought there was something just crazy wrong with me. I didn't know, everyone around me, at least it seemed to me, drank as much as I did. So I didn't think I had a problem right away. I didn't know what was going on, but my body was freaking out. I started having panic attacks and this and that. And it took me a little bit, I mean, I'm not ashamed, but it took a little while for like me to connect those dots. Okay, this is what's happening. Like, you are addicted to alcohol. If you go so many hours without it, I started getting seizures. Like, it was bad, really young too. And it took me more than one try, probably more than 10 tries to be real, to actually stay sober. But I thought I tried everything. But one of the big pieces for me in coming out and helping other people with this is that AA and the 12 steps was really, I'm just going to say it was detrimental to me. It made me worse. It didn't work for me. And it's really important to me to share the message that there are other ways to recover, that AA isn't the only way. And the reason that that's important is because, like Michael said, she needed to hear what she has to say when she was in active addiction. I needed to hear what I have to say when I was in active addiction and when the most popular method of recovery wasn't working for me. Like, it works if you work it, wasn't working for me. And so it's really important to me to share that there are other ways to recover. And I specifically work with people where the 12 steps and AA programs, or, programs based on step work, when they're not working, that's who I work with now. And it's specifically important to me to reach those people who may feel even more hopeless because the most common out there, famous like method of recovery isn't working. So that's where I get like really passionate. But yeah, I've been sober since November 1st of 2015, and it's been a wild ride. Like, it's, I've been in recovery for like 7 years, but about to hit that 3.5-year mark of straight sobriety now. So yeah, I think that about covers it.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
So for me, and this is the unique thing about the book is this, Michael and Andrea come with their personal addiction stories, their active addiction. I come in as a family member. I didn't have the addiction problem. I would say some of my drinking historically was probably quite a bit more than what I should have, but my whole role in this book is to share the family side. My dad, I took him off life support in 2012, watched him take his last breath. And that was from a lifelong alcohol addiction. His alcohol was so bad that he suffered from what's called hepatic encephalopathy, which is where the methane levels in your blood are so high that you act drunk without taking a drink. He was pulled over twice in a 5-hour span on suspicion of drunk driving, and he blew zeros. So that's how his liver and kidneys were just shutting down. And so, and then after his death, the other thing I was sharing in this book is after his death was, I started going through my downward spiral. I started making all my mistakes, and, coupled with, from the depression and anxiety, him dealing with his death, my wife was probably dealing with some postpartum depression because 3 months after his death, my son was born. I was also on 11 or 12 different medications, including Adderall, Ritalin, Depakote, Neurontin, Gabapentin, Celebrex, Mirapex, Darvocet. It was a whole slew of medications. And within my son's first year of life, cheated on my wife, had an affair, We worked things back out, but then I ended up, I got kicked out of the Marine Corps with an other than honorable discharge because of the affair. And that's when I really, like, I started from ground zero at 32, 33, however old I was when I got kicked out, had to find myself all over again, you know, you know, I was able to recreate who I was, went through a few different jobs, didn't like them at all. The one job that I enjoyed was I worked for the Salvation Army for a time where I was running the retail stores, the thrift shops in the area. There were like 7 of them. But my passion was when I was able to go into the rehab center that those stores funded and speak to the people in rehab. And they told me I spoke to them on a level nobody's ever spoke to them on. And that was the time when I was like, okay, maybe there's something to that. Now I stepped away from that because I shut that rehab facility down, and then I went and tried to chase money instead of filming at one time. But you know, everything always led me back to, you know, working with addicts in recovery and that kind of thing. And so that's really kind of my story leading up to the inception of the book and working with Michael and Andrea.
Don?
You know, what I find really fascinating here is that even though you guys were brought together as coaches, right? This is really, you came from 3 different backgrounds, from 3 different areas of the country, with a wide, diverse socioeconomic backgrounds too, right? That the disease really transcends everybody.
Yeah.
And you guys came together and wrote a book. And even though you have 3 separate, completely different experiences, right? And in Andrea's case, I mean, I can feel for her to a degree because, you know, that most popular way to get help didn't work for her.
In my opinion, like at this point, I'm just completely honest about it. It made me worse. I never relapsed so many times than when I was in AA. And yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like this, the background and the experience that you guys have brought into this book to share with people with addiction, that there isn't one solution to the problem, and that it is something that transcends, you know, all different aspects of life. It's not race related. It's not, you know, male or female or anything like that. It doesn't even matter what you do. It transcends it all.
Yes, we are 3 different people from 3 different areas of the U.S. And this just goes to show like one of our underlying missions behind the book and purpose for doing what we're doing is to really show the world that addiction doesn't discriminate, and so recovery doesn't discriminate either. And what's really awesome too about the book is that, yes, you know, here I am, somebody that, you know, the rooms saved my life, like after rehab. For Andrea, the rooms, you know, made her worse. And that's fucking brilliant, in my opinion. It's really brilliant so that people can see very different sides and really see that, hey, you know what, like, just because it worked for Michael, it didn't work for Andrea, but what works for Andrea doesn't work for Michael. And they're both sober and they're both living really awesome lives. And so we really want to be able to portray that and be able to articulate that to our audience, and also just to anybody that is even just, you know, even curious about addiction, is that, you know, like that there are multiple pathways to recover, and that it doesn't matter who you are or where you live. And our stories, you know, besides the stories that we share about ourselves, the stories that we share in our book, you know, they're from an array of different backgrounds of people, so that people that have this stigma, like, we squash that stigma. You know, that is one of the things, is we want to squash it and soften it so that people can actually be educated, because knowledge is power, you know. And it's one of those things that we're really passionate about, people understanding and knowing, you know, that there are multiple pathways to recover. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And before you decide to form an opinion, read what we have to say, and then you can form an opinion.
That's beautiful. And I love the fact, like you say, you guys have all different roads of recovery, all different journeys, all different ways that you came from point A to point B in your recovery. Can you talk a little bit about the structure of the book?
Yeah. Oh, guys, the structure of the book is brilliant. And the reason why I really believe the structure of our book is brilliant is because we share all of our stories. We share what it was like, what happened, and then what it's like now. We also share the bird's eye view of addiction in general in America, and then we take it down to the granular level, like all the way down to statistics on what's going on. What's also awesome about the way our book is laid out is at the end of every single chapter, we pose tough questions for people to think about. So it's almost like a workbook in a sense. We take you through a journey where you actually start to, get curious with yourself and what's going on with you, or what's really going on with that person that you're concerned about, which is why you picked this book up to read, or why did you pick it up just to read in general to get knowledge. We wanted to have questions at the end of every chapter so that people could really just take a moment and really let it sink in the information that they just read. And then we also we have the intro and the conclusion. We made sure that this book is a call to action. The questions allow people at the very end to be like, hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to sink? Or are you going to swim? Scott, Andrea, do you guys have anything else about the layout of the book?
The way we have it set is the first several chapters we have is sink. And then the next segment of chapters we have tread. And then the final segment of chapters we have swim, right? Because realistically what was happening at the beginning of the book, the three of us were sinking, right? And I include myself in that, not from the addict's perspective, but there was a lot in realistic, I guess a lot of my sinking actually is in the swim section in my part 2 chapter, but that was the start of me sinking. And Michael and Andrea were sinking in their addiction as well at the very beginning. So the start of this book is we want to punch people in the mouth with the harsh reality, with the harsh experiences of what actually took place, and to not hold any, people are so afraid to talk about the shit that they went through. They think that, oh my God, if I share, the fact that I was trading cocaine or sex for cocaine, that somebody's going to fucking judge me. Or they're going to talk about how, if I share the fact that, I had an affair on my wife, that, people are going to judge me and women are going to hate me everywhere I go. That's simply not the case. And we put this book in a way that punches people in the mouth with experience and make people think, and there's going to be people that are going to read this story and be like, oh my God, you fucking dirtbags. And then they're going to get to, our part 2 of their story, and they'll be like, oh my God, these people are survivors. That's the whole point to this. And that's exactly how we have it structured. And,
I love that.
And Dom, going back to what you said a minute ago, you were talking about how, addiction really transcends everybody. Mm. The statistics right now is 1 in 10 Americans, and this is just drug abuse. Alcohol is even higher, but 1 in 10 Americans are dealing with a drug abuse problem currently. That's over 33 million Americans dealing with a drug abuse problem. Okay. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know more than 9 people. So what that should tell you guys is, for every one person, that 1 in 10, the other 9 are affected. Mm. So what that should further tell people is every person in the U.S. is affected to some degree.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the questions that I had, for the person who has the addiction, right? This book is obviously going to really speak to them on a very personal level. But for the person who doesn't have the addiction, for the loved one, right? Reading this book from their perspective, what perspective do you think you're bringing as the addict to them in terms of the help that they're going to get from reading the book?
Understanding. Mm. We shared multiple stories in there where, family members are saying, why can't you just stop? Right. And I was the same way. My dad, oh, here he goes again. He's drunk again. Moron. The hell's wrong with you? And it wasn't until I had the conversation with him where he was crying like a 6-year-old kid and saying he was fat and nasty and nobody loved him and alcohol was his escape, that I had this almost it blew me away. And so I froze. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. But it wasn't until after his death, really, that when I started talking to other people that were in addiction and that kind of thing, and when I really started to gain an understanding, right? You have this argument right now that, oh, it's a choice. No, it's a disease. Oh, it's a mindset. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. You know what? Who gives a shit? It doesn't really matter what label you put on it. The fact of the matter is that person's dealing with something. Maybe it started as a prescription medication. Maybe it started as a choice. Maybe it started as partying. But right now, that person's dealing with a problem and he needs help right now. And so, the big thing for, the addict to the family member in this book is just to help people gain insight, gain actual understanding what's actually taking place. That they're not just, I just have to have a needle in my arm. I just have to have a bottle in my mouth. I just have to have the white stuff up my nose. Like, that's not the case. And in terms of like heroin, what people don't realize when it comes to like heroin is the people that are deep in the throes of heroin addiction, they're not looking for heroin to get high anymore. They're looking for heroin to cure the dope sickness. And a lot of people don't understand that. So the big thing is understanding.
Same with drinking there, Scott.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not.
I drank to make the withdrawal go away. Even before I knew what I was doing, like before I knew I was addicted, I was drinking to feel better because I was in withdrawal.
Well, and Mikey, you got something to say on that too. There you are.
With like my seizures?
Well, your seizures, your shakes in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah. Again, I was like, wait, what's he alluding to? But no, like Scott was saying, just like Andrea said, it's for people to understand, like, it gets to the point where it's not a choice anymore. Like it's like either like we continue doing this so that we get rid of it, or we're going to die. And that's exactly what happened, to me. And that's what people need to understand, is that when it gets to the level of the addiction, like myself and Andrea were in, again, like for addicts and alcoholics, like it's survival mode, like, because we know that if we don't stop and if we stop, actually bad stuff's going to happen, like seizures or even death, because our body's not used to not having it in our system. And so again, just to bring it back full circle, Dom, like that's why this book is so good for people that just even want to get knowledgeable about, people that are addicts or alcoholics, and those people that have not nice things to say about us. I'll say me. I won't speak everybody, but that already have that judgment about me. It's like, read and understand the mental horrors we go through before placing judgment on, like, oh my gosh, like she's choosing to be that way. She's choosing to go spend that money. She's choosing this. So yeah.
What I find interesting is you talk a lot about survival mode, but isn't it wonderful that you go from survival mode to surviving?
Mm-hmm.
Same word, but you're not in that mode of survival, but you're actually surviving now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And especially, I can speak for Michael and Andrea, and I can include myself in this. You go from surviving to thriving.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the big piece is, because the thing is, people do enter, they do get sober and they go into rehab, and then they graduate rehab. But the problem is relapse rates from after graduating rehab are anywhere from 50 to 75% within 30 to 90 days.
And it goes up after that.
And a lot of times that's because they are stuck in their survival mode because they don't have a plan for their aftercare, and they're stuck in that survival mode. So until that person can go from surviving to thriving and start to enjoy life, and a lot of people, when in the throes of addiction, they forget how to enjoy life. And so if they can go from surviving to thriving, they start to enjoy life, then their chances of relapse plummet even more.
Something that feels like kind of a thread throughout all of this, and it's something that I've seen with coaching people on a variety of topics, is this guilt and shame can be really isolating. And I think part of what you guys are trying to do is create a community. And so I'm curious, what have you seen as a powerful tool for people, maybe even if you're not dealing with addiction, but all of these topics that we consider too dark for polite conversation? How do you invite people to step out of that guilt and shame so that they really can enter recovery?
I'll go first. I'm like, Diego. What I always tell people that, you know, that are in guilt and shame, one of the biggest things I tell them, because this is something that my sponsor told me, is that, you know, your past is your greatest asset. And I invite them by saying, you know, if you don't talk about it, then there is somebody out there that is literally crying on their bathroom floor, just hoping that you will be that message. And so I just say, like, you know, in order for them to not have that guilt and shame, it's like, own your story, like own where you've been, and to put it in perspective, because so many of us, we beat ourselves up for all the horrible, nasty, manipulative, lying things we did in our active addiction. And then we don't give ourselves credit for, oh my God, like we saw a problem, we recognized it, you know, like we took care of it. So there's like, if anything about that, like all of that is empowering actions, not disempowering. And so for me, it's about, for them, like, again, it brings full circle. It's like, put in perspective, like what you've been through, and just take a moment to just pause and be like, holy cow, like this is where I was. This is where I am now. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And I even relate it to, like, you know, even if it's on a more minor problem, it's like nobody has guilt and shame for coming up and saying, you know, like I screwed up at work, you know, or I screwed up in my marriage, or I screwed up when whatever other problems people have. This is just another problem that you decided to fix, and now you get to own it. You know, like sometimes I think we put too much pressure on the whole addiction part, other than just like keep it simple and be like, hey, I had a problem. I addressed it. I'm getting better. There's nothing shameful about it.
Exactly.
I think for me, you know, the approach that I take to help people own their story is I air out my dirty laundry. I will meet a person, not know them from Adam, and I will share with them the affair that I had. I will share with them the mistakes that I made, because one, if they judge, I really don't care. But two, by doing that allows that person to understand that I'm coming from a place of non-judgment. I'm not perfect. At once upon a time, I didn't have my life together, right? And I made a lot of mistakes. And so if I'm open enough to share my dirty laundry with anybody, whether I know them or not, that gives that person the chance to say, okay, he's not going to judge me for the mistakes that I made. And I've had people that didn't know me from Adam after I shared my story that divulged crazy things that, and they're sitting there as they're telling me, they're like, I don't even know how I'm telling you this right now. I've never shared this with anybody in my life, and I'm sharing it with you, and I've known you for 3 minutes. But that's because I create this space of non-judgment, right? And I also share with them that, you know, a lot of times the people that, you know, might judge them, they've probably committed worse. They've probably done worse things, or they're so frustrated with their current situation that they're projecting their pain and their frustration themselves onto you. And so when I'm able to help people understand that, that's when they start to see that I'm really not alone, and I'm really not the only one that made this mistake. And I tell them, listen, I'm able to share this. I'm able to share the fact that I made these mistakes because I know damn well I'm not the only one that had an affair. With divorce rates over 50, 60%, whatever they are, come on, let's be real, right? So who cares, right? And so that's how I'm able to start to get them to understand that they can open up about the things that they've been through, even if it's just one person. But, you know, the other piece to this is I share an analogy with people to help them understand that they need to start getting the stuff inside out. And that's, you know, think about a Coke bottle, right? You guys ever shake up a Coke bottle, right? Right? So what happens? On the outside, it gets rigid. On the inside, a lot of pressure builds up. And then when you pop that cap, an explosion happens, right? So us as people, we're a lot like that. And the fact that when we hold something inside that we've been through or that happened to us or that we did, we start to get rough around the edges, a little bit irritable. We tend to snap pretty easily on people. And on the inside, we've got all this pressure built up, maybe this personal angst or this self-loathing or self-hatred or whatever. And then as soon as somebody looks like somebody that wronged us, or somebody breathes wrong, or sneezes like somebody we once knew, or whatever, it pops that cap, and that's the trigger that creates this explosion. And then in the world of addiction, what I'd say is, you ever seen those videos where the Mentos is dropped into the Coke bottle, right? That massive geyser, That's exactly what addiction does to the Coke bottle when it's shaken up. And so if people can just pour just little by little out at a time, what happens is as they start to, get rid of some of the Coke inside that bottle, so when they do have that cap popped and there's only that much left in the bottle, it's just a little hiss or nothing at all.
So your book, where, if people were interested in reading it, where can they get a hold of it?
We are on Amazon.
Yay.
Are on-
Yeah,
How about that?
Yeah, this is wild to say.
Right? That's amazing, guys.
Hey, if you're gonna put a book out, at least go to the biggest book reseller. I mean,
Right?
Wait a minute. We're going to add a little exclamation point to that. We're Amazon Prime.
Yay.
But we're on Amazon. We also are on. You can also purchase the Kindle version on Amazon as well. We are on Barnes and Noble. You can also buy their Nook version as well. In my area, we have the Barnes and Noble store. The goal is to get it in all the Barnes and Noble across the world, or across the country anyway. And then you can also find us on the Google Play Store, the Apple iBook Store. I think that really covers the big ones. Yeah.
And the name of the book, again, just for the people watching, is Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim.
That's right.
Do you guys have a book signing coming up you want to talk about?
Yes, Scott.
Great.
Yep. So Mikey actually just had one, and that was pretty awesome. I love the pictures. I have one coming up at my local Barnes and Noble this Friday, April 12th. It's at 7 p.m. I'm trying to create a Barnes and Noble takeover. I want people to not be able to buy any other book because they're too busy listening to what I got to say in my book signing. Anyway.
Can't get online for coffee until you buy the book.
Exactly. And you can't go to Starbucks until you buy my book as well.
Can you give us the address, Scott, of that Barnes and Noble up by you?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say why Scott looks that up, all of you, which is really awesome that I was talking about earlier. The month of April is actually Alcohol Awareness Month. It's National Alcohol Awareness Month. So what a great time to launch a book on alcohol and addiction. What a great time to do book signings to bring awareness to addiction.
What a great time to be on the show to talk about.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, you guys.
Yeah.
It's divine
That's
timing, guys. Mic drop.
Well, and
Good time of the year too. April, people are out and about. They're in the stores. They're gonna want to, like February would be like, oh, snow, but where it's April,
Spring is like detox time,
right,
cleansing.
that's right. All new,
starting to come out of hibernation mode.
Yeah.
right.
For real.
So then you need to have us back on the show in September when it's National Recovery Month.
Oh, how wonderful! Interesting to see where your book goes from now and then, as far as your sales and like
Yeah.
that. Nice to have a recap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that address is 6501 North Grape Road in Mishawaka, Indiana. Basically, if people are familiar with my area, it's in the University Park Mall. You can't miss it from the street, basically. So that's where I'll be.
When is that, Scott, again?
That is this Friday, April 12th at 7 p.m.
Perfect. So I've got a final question for you. I think this topic is super important, and I'm curious, what is the one thing that our listeners could do that would be the most impactful to really help get this book further reached out into the world?
Share it.
Yeah, share it.
Like I've said before, knowledge is power. And just, the more people share, the more people start to talk about it, the more comfortable people are going to be about it. Because let's be real, like, it's not something to go ooh around. Like, people don't go ooh around cancer, or other addictions, like, why do that around alcohol addiction? It's about, when the more that people share, the more people just are like, okay, like, their guard starts to drop and people start to, be able to normalize something that should already be normalized, but instead it's being attacked.
Or have people be more accepting of others that do have addictions and realize that, this is something that they want to help themselves. There's no reason to make them be judged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to share something to that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have a squirrel moment here for a second. So I'm reading another book, and they're talking about the history of heroin. nowadays we look at heroin as in heroin addicts as junkies and homeless people and on the street and the scum of the earth and that kind of thing. And that's what a lot of people view, addicts in general. But, if you look at the history of heroin, the book Dope Sick talks about how doctors created heroin. Once upon a time, they were giving children concoctions with heroin in it. And somehow now at this, and once all the, what they say, something about I can't find it, but basically where, the respectable addicts died off. And then now all of a sudden there's this stigma. And of course that was 1906 or whatever it was. But now there's this stigma about addiction. But what people need to realize it's the doctors that created this. Mm. And so there shouldn't even be a stigma on this to begin with. And so, like she said, people need to stop being so, icky feeling around addiction. Like, talk about it, open up about it. And, like this podcast or the post that we share or the book or, spread the word, because if you can, it's all about planting seeds at this point. Plant one seed. You plant, what we think this book is going to do is plant 5 seeds with each book, right? You buy the book, you tell 5 different people about it, or you share it with somebody and that kind of thing. And then they get the book and they plant 5 seeds. And what that starts to do is that starts to put that dent in that 33 million people that have a drug abuse problem. Starts to put that dent in it. And sometimes you don't even realize that the person that needs the seed planted the most is the person sitting right next to you, your mother, your father, your child, your brother, your sister, your spouse, whatever, right? And so it's all about just getting the word out, helping us plant seeds. This is one of those things that takes a village to spread. We're on a very large farm and we have a ton of seeds to spread, and we need as much help as we can to spread those seeds.
And that brings up such interesting conversations. We'll have to go further into this next time, just even about like the systemic problems with like the opioid addiction. Like, there are companies that very specifically knew the impacts of these drugs and spread it anyway. And then we blame the people who are on the ground level dealing with these addictions, right? So when we can have more open and honest conversations, I think gives us an opportunity to really kind of point blame at the people who are a little bit more culpable for starting these problems, and allow us to give space and help for people who are really innocent bystanders of these issues. And I mean, we know that we can look at so many different addictions. We can look at food, we can look at alcohol, we can look at cigarettes, and see that there's a lot of systemic issues at play here, and that we can stop blaming the people who have been pretty innocently affected. So that's like a whole nother topic of conversation. And to wrap it all together, Scott, like you said, it actually doesn't matter, right? Like, if it's in your brain, if it's a mindset thing, if it's real or not, the thing is that these are consequences that are happening regardless of what started them. Like, we need to get over that piece and start getting people the help that they need, no matter what's causing it. So I applaud all of you in the work that you're doing. This is super important and super juicy, and thank you for being brave and standing out in this way. Where can our listeners find and follow you as a collective? Like, where can they get more information?
They can follow us on Facebook. We have our Drowning in Addiction Facebook page, which is super flipping awesome. They can follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @DrowningInAddiction. They can follow us on our website, www.drowninginaddiction.com. And again, shoot us messages on either of those social media platforms, and one of the 3 of us will get back to you ASAP. That's how you get a hold of us.
And buy a book. Everyone, go out, buy a book. Thank you guys so much. It's been a super pleasure having you, and I can't wait to watch this journey continue to grow. This is important stuff.
Yes, it is. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
You guys have been awesome.
It's been wonderful, guys.
Dom, where can our listeners find and follow you at?
They can find me on CoachDomCampbell.com. My contact information is there.
Awesome. And Donna, what about you?
Donna at DesireStateCoaching.com.
Awesome. And you can find and follow me at Fully Aligned Coaching on Facebook. And you can find and follow us at The Second Nature Show on Facebook, or The Second Nature Show at gmail.com. And we'd love to answer any questions. These people will be around to answer your questions. So drop it in the comments if you've got anything for them. They would love to be able to support in that way. And be sure to tune in next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And remember, if you change your habits, you can change your life. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.